Good evening. Tonight we're joined by Dale Kazmarek, and of course Mark's here. How you doing, Dale?
I might be.
I'm doing good.
I've been up since 2 o'clock this morning and had to drive down to Chicago and go downtown to the university, make 3 stops there, and then come back up and make another couple of 2 stops on my way out. So I'm kind of tired.
I'm going to Chicago tomorrow.
Good for you.
Huh?
So good for you. Enjoy that traffic down there.
Well, we're not going to be in Chicago.
You're still going to have traffic.
There's a peanut gallery again.
I thought you were supposed to go crack peanuts in the gallery.
Nope.
I don't know what she's doing.
Anyway.
I had to do something near Chicago, just near Chicago. Wasn't even in downtown Chicago, and I ran into a really bad traffic going past Midway Airport, which is still considered Chicago, but it's on the outskirts of Chicago.
Yep, that's Highway 50. That's Cicero Avenue, Highway 51. No, that's Highway 50, isn't it?
50, yeah.
Yeah. Cicero Avenue. Yep. Yeah, that's crazy. And I have a nickname for Chicago. I call it Shit-Hago. Sorry, but it's true.
Because you don't like driving down there.
Because the traffic is shit down there.
Well, they used to say that Chicago actually comes from smelly onion. Did you know that?
Well, I'm going down there.
American word.
Actually, I'm going to the same place you're supposed to be at tomorrow, Dale.
Yeah.
What is that? The Chicago Paracon?
Yeah, Chicago Paranormal Convention. Yeah, it's going to be out there in Countryside, from around 12 p.m. till 7 p.m. There's going to be about 80 vendors. There's going to be several speakers. Allison Jorlene's going to be talking. Gary Isley the second or third. He's going to be talking about the Ghost of the Black Hawk Wars, which we actually had a chance to investigate several years ago with him and Dan Norville. We got some amazing evidence out there. And there's supposed to be somebody else talking about some Grassman or something like that. I'm sorry? Something.
I remember that. I can't think what that was now.
Yeah. I think there's like 4 speakers, 4 or 5 speakers. And, I mean, you can't beat the price. It's only $1 admission for the whole day. I don't know how he makes any money, but I know how. Well, he probably charges the vendors for their tables and the readers for their tables, and that's how he makes the money. Because I did that the same thing when I was at the Midwest Spirit Fest.
We'll be talking about Goatman, Flesher Folklore.
Right, there you go.
Nathan Couch.
I'm going to hope to sit in on some of those speakers when I get a chance.
And then Barnaby Jones is going to be speaking there tomorrow too.
Okay, yeah.
Bob Anderson. Yeah.
It's going to be a nice event. It's a pretty good sized venue. It's actually part of the Teamsters Local 150 building. It's a big black building. It's very easy not to miss. And I'm going to get there probably around 10 o'clock to set up. They're going to open the doors around noon, and then they're going to have all these people. And the last couple of times they had this event, they had a lot of people. They used to have the events in a smaller, like little restaurant on Archer Avenue near 63rd Street, and I mean that was crowded. I mean it had a lot of people in there going through, getting readings, just going to the different tables and vendors and other investigators, and I like to do it just to make a lot of connections and talk to people as well. So I'll be passing out a lot of my business cards when I'm there, and that's how I made some contacts for people that wanted to show up at the Midwest Spirit Fest that I did last year. I don't know if I'm going to have one this year. It doesn't look like I'm going to have one this year for some reason. Um, you know, without going into too much detail, I just didn't. We didn't. We haven't contacted one another yet to set this thing up, and basically it's already June. It's getting late. If we're going to do it in October, I would have liked to get this thing set up and started, put the stuff on Eventbrite as early as maybe March, so people could, really get. We can get a lot of people, get vendors, get psychics, and get this all set up. And it's a lot of work to set something like that up. I mean, I've done several of these now. I participated in what was then called the Ghost Trackers Exposition, starting like in the late 70s to the early 1980s, and that was a lot of work. So I mean, just attracting people, to talk and to be there is one thing, but then trying to get the public involved is another thing. So I mean, if you got a lot of followers on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, I mean, you can get the word out pretty easily. It's still a matter of people. I mean, considering it's only $1 to get in, I mean, you're just going to get a lot of people. Yeah. And
I think it was that way last year as well, because I went last year.
Yeah.
Only $1 to get in.
Because when I showed up last year, the guy that runs it, Jack or whatever his name is,
Jack
he came up to me and he's like, well, if I would have known you would have been down here, I would have asked you to be a speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been trying to, give a talk there for several years now. And I guess he just has a lot of other commitments that he's promised people, from years ago that to there. He's a very nice guy and everything. I've met him several times. We collaborated a bit with the Midwest Spirit Fest last year because he had a lot of contacts. He had a lot of people. He had a lot of psychics and readers and vendors that wanted to come in. So it really helped bring in, some revenue for that. And I was hoping to do that again this year. But, I mean, the way I look at it is a hell of a lot of work.
yeah.
And, not that I'm getting any younger or older, which I'm getting older, obviously, but I'm not getting younger. But I mean, it's just a lot of work to get everything set up. And sometimes when you do this, you get people that, hey, Ron, how you doing? Ron's one of my members from Crystal Lake. Sometimes you'll get people that will cancel. I know. I think it was the first year. I had like 10 speakers, and I think 2 or 3 of them canceled. So I had to step in and do 2 talks to kind of make up for those, those hours that we had something there. And the other one, we just kind of did a panel discussion, for the other hour towards the end, and everybody seemed to like that as well. Getting everybody up there so you could just ask questions about anybody or anything that was up there. So we were going to do that again this year and just make an hour just for a panel discussion. We've had all the speakers there and let them just have the audience just pummel them with questions. People, the audience like to do that kind of stuff. Sometimes when somebody's doing a presentation and they get done with their presentation, they'll say, do I have any questions? And it's like everybody kind of crawls in their shell. They're kind of shy to put their hand up. But if you get a panel discussion going and you get a couple of people ask the question, before you know it, you got 5 or 10 people with their hands up trying to ask questions.
Yeah, I've seen those at the Milwaukee Paracon. They did the T when T was running it. That he's had a couple of those panel-like discussions, and they went over really well.
Oh yeah, does he still run the Milwaukee Paracon?
No.
Okay.
It's run by Mike Huberty now.
Oh, okay. I know Mike. Yeah. I've
So,
never actually met him, but I know him.
yeah, Mike is he just posted something about that too. I saw it.
He builds a lot of paranormal equipment. If I'm thinking about the same Mike Huberty. No?
No,
He's got a band named Sunspot.
We are not going to have the peanut gallery button in every 5 minutes. He has a band called Sunspot, a local band from Madison, and there's only 3 of them, and they play like kind of paranormal music sometimes. And he also has a show called. He has a podcast that he does, something after dark. I can't remember what it was called right off the hand.
Well, this guy must be thinking it must have a real similar name, because I've said that before in the past and I was corrected on that. So, I mean, it must be somebody with a very similar name. I'd have to give that some thought. But I know there's a guy that has a similar sounding name or something like that builds a lot of paranormal equipment, EM pumps and all types of detectors and so forth that he sells it to the public. So, and obviously that's not him.
Yeah, it's October 19th this year.
Okay.
Saturday, October 19th, Milwaukee Paracon. And it's now run by American Ghost Walks, which is his thing.
Yeah, Mike Huberty's thing.
And
it seemed like a lot of the different ghost tours kind of like were absorbed by that American Ghost Walks that were like in this area. I mean, several different tour guides had companies that were either bought up or sold to the American Ghost Walks. And
I just spilled my soda.
I'm sorry?
He asked me what I was bitching about, and I said, I just spilled my soda. Well, Mike's sister will be there in Chicago too tomorrow. She's she's the one speaker, Allison Jorlin.
Yeah.
That's Mike's sister.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yep. I've met her a few times.
Yeah, I met her. We run into each other a lot during Paracons and so forth. I've actually met Larry a couple of times. Like I said, he took us to a few places associated with the Black Hawk Wars. There's a bridge overlooking a battle that took place, and you know how I hate bridges, so I wasn't too keen being on that bridge. But then there's also the Battlefield Park. I think it's called something like that, and they had a little skirmish that took place there. That there were 12 militia people that were actually killed, and they got their markers right there. So we were doing a Phasma box session there, and we kind of asked a question. Then all of a sudden, this voice came through and said, 12 remains. And I go, whoa, did you hear that? 12 remains, like 12 bodies. And he goes, I kind of made him a believer of the Phasma box after he heard that, and a few other things. And then we went to a couple of cemeteries later that evening, not too far from Kirkland. And we didn't have permission to go in the cemetery, but there was no fence. So there's a sidewalk that runs all the way around the cemetery. So you can be on the sidewalk and be investigating without, trespassing. And we actually had several cop cars go past, and they just drove past and they just kept on going. And I wanted to go back again this year when my friend came in from England, because Dan Norville, who used to work with Larry, Dan Norville, basically, if you know Dan Norville, he basically kind of retired from the paranormal. He wasn't doing it anymore. But before that happened, he had said, well, we now have permission to go in those cemeteries after hours. And I go, whoa, that's cool. So I was hoping to do that this year. And unfortunately, when I asked them about them, maybe you and Larry can take us around there and show us some spots and go into those cemeteries. And he says, well, I thought he would make an exception for me. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, it was me coughing.
I thought he would make an exception for me, but then he said, well, I have retired from the paranormal. Reach out to Larry. And it was funny when I reached out to before I emailed them both, and Larry had said, "Well, reach out to Dan," and Dan said, "Reach out to Larry," and then so I did both, and eventually Larry got back to me and said that he wasn't going to be able to make any of those dates in August at all. So we just kind of scrapped that idea of going out there. I don't have permission to go out there. I mean, I could go out there and stand on the sidewalk again, but I didn't want to go into the cemetery itself. And it is kind of a far trek for me from where I'm at. I'm the southwest side of the city in Oak Lawn, so it's a bit of a drive. It's not too terribly bad, but if I would have had somebody there to kind of guide us around and let us, be with us when we go into those places, we would have went for sure. So, but we're still planning a heck of a lot of stuff for this year when my friend comes in. He's coming in on August the 6th, and he's going back on the 27th. So he's going to be here for 3 weeks. And we're going a number of places, including he wants to go to Gettysburg really bad. So we're going to Gettysburg for 4 days. And
it sounds like that trip's going to be packed, though. 3 weeks.
Well,
stop investigations.
Yeah, I mean, when I kind of tossed it up in the air and said, well, who'd be willing to go to Gettysburg? I had a few people from my group. There's a few people from another group called Ghost Head Soup that normally kind of tag along because they've been there almost every year with me. And like I said, I can go back to Gettysburg every year, and I'll still find new places I've never been to. I mean, it's just that big of a location. And so I've been there about, at least 8 times, maybe 9 times. And it seems like I can always find interesting locations to investigate or to show, and I just love showing the place. It's just an amazing place.
I got a question for you, Dale.
Yeah.
When you go to those places like Gettysburg and those places, do you actually fly out there or do you drive?
Oh, we drive. Yeah. For me, it's roughly about a 10-hour, 11-hour drive from my house in Oak Lawn to go out to Gettysburg. So, I mean, we're going to leave super, super early in the morning, probably, 6 o'clock or something. We'll get there probably around 7 o'clock their time because we lose an hour going over to the East Coast. And we still have a chance to do something that day. We check in our hotel real quick. So there are a couple of places I could show real quickly around the town of Gettysburg. And then we were hoping what we were going to probably do, the parking lot of the Jenny Wade house. And the Jenny Wade was the only civilian killed in Gettysburg during the battle. They have a parking lot for that and the old orphanage across the street, which we actually did a couple of years ago when we were there. We were able to spend 2 hours in the Jenny Wade and 2 hours in the orphanage and had a great time. But you could literally park on the parking lot right there, and you could take one step and you're on the battlefield. That's how close you are. It's East Cemetery Hill. So you don't necessarily have to be right on the battlefield to maybe get some EVPs or to get some pictures or video or stuff like that. And so we're going to do that again. And it's perfectly legal. It's a parking lot. It doesn't say any certain hours you can't be there. It doesn't only say for customers only because, again, the building's closed at that time. So even if it did say customers only, I mean, the building's closed. I mean, there's nobody going in and out of there. So, yeah, we got a number of interesting places that we're going to be doing. And there's 2 bridges we want to investigate, including one called Sachs Bridge, which is the more famous of the 2, and then the John Eisenhower Bridge, which they call Suicide Bridge. So we're going to, I'm going to try to get permission from the Adams County Sheriff's Department to be out there after dark at the Sachs Bridge, because that's not on the battlefield. It's part of Adams County. They do have a sign saying no, nothing after dusk, but if maybe I can convince them that we're all responsible adults and we're out there, we're not going to be, putting graffiti on the bridge or destroying stuff, that maybe they'll allow us to come there. And if not, then we'll just have to do something, later in the day, maybe when the crowds die down or something. Because there's been reports of stuff going on throughout the day and throughout the evening. Sounds of footsteps, sounds of horses and wagons. Because that was one of the retreats, one of the retreat routes that Lee did on July 4th. To go back to Virginia, and there have been a lot of strange things that have happened on that bridge. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of the interesting spots. But I mean, we have a ton of interesting locations. Of course, hanging with you guys, and when we go up to Wisconsin to do the Wisconsin trip, and see those locations, including the Beast of Bray Road and other spots. I think, Paul will get a kick out of that. We might have a few others that may be tagging along as well. So, I mean, we have like certain days kind of delegated for certain locations. We got a whole day in Peoria that we're going to be out there with Sylvia Schultz, and she's going to show us through the what they call the hilltop of Peoria, what remains of the Peoria State Hospital Asylum locations. And I think we're going to get access to a couple of buildings that pretty much in like Flint, I think, in a couple of buildings. I really wanted to get into Pollock Hospital, because that is where it's an old tuberculosis hospital, and that's where a lot of deaths occurred. They actually have a section called the men's death ward and the women's death ward, and people just died like crazy from TB. They used to call it consumption back there, actually. But unfortunately, it's not owned by the same persons that we did our investigation, and they just want a ton of money to get in there, unfortunately. And we just don't have that. We don't have the amount of personnel that we would need to make it affordable for everybody. So we'll do some other things. There's some cemeteries. There's actually the Peoria library, that when they were doing some renovations, they found a number of bones underneath the foundation, and they had to do some investigating to figure out what that was. And obviously, because they disturbed them, there's some reports that people think that parts of the library are actually haunted. So we actually got up. Sylvie was actually able to arrange one of the librarians to actually take us into the basement and take us into spots that would be very close to where those bodies were. So we have kind of a guide for a part of that day. So that's going to be pretty cool. But we're going to a couple of museums in Chicago for each day. The Museum of Science and Industry and the Field Museum of Natural History. They're both very haunted. The ashes of Clarence Darrow were scattered in the Jackson Park Lagoon on the south side of the Museum of Science and Industry. And that dates back to the old Columbian Exposition. It's one of the buildings that were built, what they call the White City. We got a few things that we're going to be doing inside there, including there's a 007 exhibit coming to Chicago. And of course, my friend is from London. And of course, 007 is from England. So it's going to be kind of a surprise that we're going to be taking the tour and seeing some of the artifacts, that one of the Aston Martins that was used in the show and so forth.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And then we're actually going to go into two exhibits that are very haunted, which is a U-505 submarine, which Captain Czech actually, committed suicide by shooting himself in the head before they were able. The U.S. was able to capture that sub and then bring it back to Chicago. And the coal mine exhibit, which I used to do that when I was a youngster for field trips. We went there, and it was really kind of cool. But I was told by one of the former tour guides at that time he was a tour guide, and now he's a former tour guide. But he sent me a really nice long email, and he said, "Well, did you know that some of the implements that they show in that coal mine exhibit were actually taken out of locations where mine disasters took place?"
Wow.
So I said, "Wow, that's a trigger object."
Right.
You know? So I'm sure we're not going to be able to do any investigations, but we'll be able to be where those, right next to where those things were. And I'll have my recorder running, and maybe even my camera, I might be able to sneak in there some sort of like EMF device or something, because they probably won't even know what it is, and just to see what happens, when we do that. So, and then the very next day we're going to go to the Field Museum, and the Field Museum has, of course, the Egyptian room, which is spooky enough, but then there's a little sarcophagus. It's only about that big or so. It's not very big. It's maybe about a foot or a foot and a half. Very small. And it's the person that's mummy is in there is Hara, Hawra, Hara, and they say that sometimes when they come back the next day, that little sarcophagus is laying on its side because it's standing upright. It's fallen over. Some people actually say they hear screams coming down from the Egyptian room. Well, if you think of it, I mean, all that stuff that's in those the Egyptian rooms or the museums around the world, they were looted. They were looted. They were brought out. There was like grave desecration to bring those into museums. So it makes sense that those places would be haunted. And the last thing we're going to see is something that I saw one time only, and it's the very famous exhibit of the two man-eating lions, the Savo lions, and they have the actual taxidermy bodies from those two man-eaters. And again, I think that's a trigger object. I mean, even though they're dead, but the skins, the pelts, they're still there, and And who knows? I might run into a couple, maybe people from the museum, maybe maybe a tour guide or somebody that's just going past, and maybe I can just say, just kind of ask them, like, any strange things ever happen here? Especially in the Egyptian room or something. And they might say something, they might not. You never know. Sometimes they're told, kind of hush hush, don't say anything, don't perpetuate the legends or the ghost stories. But some people will just say, well,
I really want to go
I'll
there.
tell you this, but don't use my name or something like that. So,
Museum of Science and Industry.
yeah. Well, what I did is I got a 1 year's membership to museum, and so with my membership I get 2 year passes for myself and my wife, and I get 1 guest pass. I can bring a guest, so I can bring people in there for free, and then you go straight to the head of the line. You don't have to wait in the line. You just go through, and you got it on your phone, or you got it printed out, and you can beep you right through. With the Field Museum, I'm going on a Wednesday, and Wednesday is free day, so it doesn't cost you to get into the museum at all. As long as you're an Illinois resident, unfortunately. But Paul, being that he's from the UK, I had to pay $30 to get him in. So it's like us getting in both for $15 a piece. It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm trying to plan some other things for June, July, and of course later in the year. My people from my group are getting a little antsy because I haven't planned anything yet. And I've been reaching out to several places that I can't divulge right now because I don't know which way it's going to go yet.
Yeah.
But there's a theater in Chicago that I think we're going to be able to get into. I mean, I had my research assistant, Mike Rosario, contact them. And they had a very nice dialogue over the phone. They're going to have another further dialogue this Monday, and hopefully that will be the key to get us in there. They're right in the process of doing a major renovation. And sometimes when you do renovations to locations, it stirs up the ghost.
Yeah, it can upset the spirits.
Yeah. Some of the seats date back to 1982, and they're going to take all those old seats out and put new seats in and do some other renovation. So, yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. And the gentleman, he's actually a general manager, was very excited to, yeah, I'm very interested, blah, blah, blah. And let me just bring it up to my boss. And then, and then he got back to Mikey and he said, well, let's talk more on Monday. And so I think we're going to be able to do that. I was just contacted, well, actually last year by a park district, which I've been trying to get in there to do some investigating on the park district property after dark, and also into the field house, which is field house and also a maintenance building, where they have some unusual things going on. And the gentleman, I called him a couple of days ago. He wasn't around. I left a voicemail, and he got back to me yesterday. And we had a very nice conversation, and we're gonna be able to do that. That's cool. Something that we are going to be able to do. We're going to be the first investigators ever to investigate that site, which is always kind of nice. And then he also said, well, I mean, later on, as we get close to October, I guess prior to that, obviously, but he says he wants to have me do a ghost tour, a bus tour for the park district, which would mean that they would be selling tickets in their like their fall catalog for people to buy tickets. And obviously I get paid for that, so that's kind of cool. And obviously one of the stops we would be doing would be that park district. And so I once I get more information on that, I'll begin to plan the itinerary, and that'll be neat. I've done stuff for the library in that town. I'm kind of being a little cryptid right now because I want to make sure that I don't spoil anything until I get everything set in stone. But I've done stuff for that local library in that town as well. I've done presentations there, so this will be and I actually did a Civil War roundtable for that park district as well, which again, I'm in the Civil War, and I actually did a talk on Ghosts of the Civil War, which was pretty. Everybody really enjoyed that. And now I'll be doing a bus tour for that park district as well. And maybe it might be a regular thing. So if it goes over really well, I mean, people, they might add more buses, or they might have more than one bus. They might have like one day, and they might have another few days down the line, or next week they might have another tour. Because I remember when I did it for the Tinley Park District, I mean, we had a 55 passenger bus, and they ended up turning away 30 people on top of the 55 that they booked, which they could have done a smaller bus and have more people. So I think, and I'll mention that because a lot of times when you put that word ghosts on a fall event thing for the park district, it entices people to go on something like that. So hopefully it'll be something we can do at least every year or every other year.
Yeah, they do that. It sure does help with the tourist attractions when they label things like that, because we did something, they called it, well, it was a haunted boat tours. And we were just going up there because my wife had never been on the boat tours. And we were just going to go take the boat tour. Well, we ended up getting there late, so they were doing the night ones, and there was a haunted one at night, and we took it.
Yeah. Well, Richard Crowe, I don't know if you ever that rings a bell, but basically he was I guess you'd call him the original ghost hunter in Chicago, because he's been doing it long. He was doing it longer than me. He died in 2012, That's 12 years ago. It's really hard to believe it's been gone that long. But he's also buried in Resurrection Cemetery, which is haunted by the Resurrection Mary. But he was the original, the originator, I guess you'd call it, of the Chicago ghost tours. When he was taking finalizing his master's at DePaul University, and so same thing happened when they started that ghost tour. They turned away more than 50 people. They just couldn't, and it just expanded like crazy from that point forward. And he actually made a living doing that, the ghost tours and the presentations and lectures and speaking engagements, at getting nice sizable honorariums from colleges and so forth. And I started my tours in 1982, and they've been going for 40 years. Unfortunately, they've been kind of going downhill in recent years, but occasionally, I'll get several big buses that I'll do for park districts, libraries, senior clubs, retirement centers. I mean, they like to go out, especially elderly people that are kind of like basically in a location where it's sort of like they help take care of the seniors out there. I'm not sure what you would actually call that. Assisted living or something, I guess you'd call it. They love to get out and get on a bus and just get out of that building and maybe go out and have a lunch. So I've done stuff in the past where I've set up nice buffets for them at locations, or sometimes family style where they bring them right to the table. They don't even have to get up. And then, of course, they do a nice presentation and a bus tour. But, because they're seniors, it's always usually a daytime tour, even though sometimes night times are spookier. But they have always wanted a daytime presentation. So, so that's kind of the things that I'm doing right now, and kind of like getting really busy, for later on this year for sure. Because my friend's going to be in for 3 weeks, and I got to plan something every single day. So that's going to be a lot. And I got a lot of it planned. In a few more days, I can plug in pretty easily. And then after that, I just have to, because the Democratic National Convention is coming to Chicago. So those 4 days, I'm not going to be anywhere in Chicago. So we're going to do something elsewhere. We're going to do something in faraway locations from the city of Chicago for those 4 days, which I believe start on the 19th of August and run through, I believe, the 22nd for those 4 days. So we got things planned.
Near Chicago either then.
No.
Yeah. You want to probably stay away from the. No, I mean, it's just going to be a lot of people. There's probably going to be protests over there and so forth. And hopefully there won't be any violence like there was in '68 when, during the Vietnam War. That was just really kind of uncalled for. So we're planning, these trips around that. So when we have to do anything in Chicago, we're going to do it before or after that 4 days, and then during those 4 days we'll just do some other things. So like one of the days we're going to go way out to Rockford, which is far enough away from Chicago, we don't have to worry about it. And some of the others are going to be on the far south side here, far away from the city, like 25 miles or more. So we don't have to deal with not only possible violence or protesters, but just trying to find a place to park. It's going to be really terrible for those 4 days in Chicago. And but yeah, we got a lot of interesting stuff planned that we're hoping doing. And as I try to kind of reach out to some other places that we've never been to before, like that movie theater. We had reached out. You probably were aware that a couple of weeks ago I did a presentation at the Peabody Mansion, which was part of the WTTW fundraising event. for the show that I was on, Chicago Mysteries. So they had sold tickets. I think they were $45 a piece, and they were like a donation to WTTW. So you got in there and you got to see the four panelists. It was myself, Adam Seltzer, and these two very nice ladies from Chicago Tribune were there along with Jeffrey Bear. And they started off with the history of the place they were at. They also had a PowerPoint presentation for everybody, and they had put the actual portions of the Chicago Mysteries in the PowerPoint that was related to that particular person, like myself or Adam or somebody else. So they got to see, part of what we did. And then Jeffrey asked some questions, and then, the audience would ask questions, and then we got a chance to walk around. And it was really nice. They fed us real nice. They gave us snacks. They had a really nice lunch prepared for us. So when I was there, I had reached out. Well, actually, one of the ladies, a very nice lady named Sherry, came to reach out, and she just wanted to know what I was going to say about the Peabody Mansion, because I know some places they don't want to be known as the Ghost Mansion anymore. So I said, well, I mean, I probably won't say anything unless Jeffrey asks me questions specifically on that. And he never really asked me any questions about that. I had picked out a couple of places in DuPage County to talk about, which is where Peabody is. And, several places that we had talked about. It wasn't actually in the show, but the footage that was shot could be used for a later presentation for WTTW. And so then we got talking for a little while, and then I know for a fact this place was never had a thorough investigation by any paranormal team in the past. So I wanted to be the first. And I we just kind of talked back and forth, and that came up. And so I said, well, I mean, again, if we do this investigation, not saying that you need an investigation. There's not that there's something crazy going on and you want, to be removed, which I don't do anyway. But I said, we just like to investigate places that are mysterious. There's secret passageways, there's secret tunnels, there's secret rooms, there's all kind of stuff in there. And there are some ghost stories associated with it. And there's also some local legends. And she eventually said, well, I told her, I said, well, first of all, if you don't want us to say anything about, our investigation, we can keep it completely confidential. And so she said, let me get back to you when I talk to my boss, Steve. And she got back to me a few days ago, and she says, well, we're going to pass on the investigation as of right now, which I was kind of like down in the mouth about a bit on that. But she offered us the possibility of going in there on a 2-hour photography tour that we could go in there with up to 25 people for $150. So that's the total amount. That's not $150 per person. And I said, well, it's not exactly what I wanted. I wanted to go in there and do an investigation. I said, well, I'll let you know if we decide, to do something like that, because we had really wanted to do an investigation and not just, I did enough photographs when I was there, and people can go in there and take a tour and do photographs, and you don't have to pay that sizable amount of money. Which I know goes towards the restoration of the building and so forth, which I'm totally for, restoration.
Right.
But so we had that one kind of fall through, but we're working on two very good ones. The Park District and the theater, which I think we're going to be able to get into, which would be brand new investigations that nobody has done before, and we're hoping to maybe do something if we can get enough people at Ashmore Estates, or possibly even, there was a few other places that we were looking into, the Geyer Opera House in Indiana, and I can't think of all the places, but there were several places that we were looking into one was called the 1861 Masonic Lodge or Masonic Inn, which is in Keithsburg, Illinois, which is all the way on the Missouri border. It's a good long 4.5 hour trip just to get out there. And I had contacted them recently about the cost and everything, and so we're going to see first of all if we can gather a sufficient amount of people for a particular time that we can do that, prior to Paul coming in August. This would be like one of our June, July trips or something, and see what it would cost for people to get in there. Again, I think it would work out to, I think, right around 30 or 35 hours a person, which is really not that bad. But again, I think they usually want a minimum amount of people, to make it worth their while for any type of investigation. And they're very open to it being, paranormally active at that place. I've never been there. In fact, I never heard about it. Some guy had sent me a Facebook message out of the clear blue sky and said, "Have you heard about this building?" I said, "No." So I began checking into the place, and it sounds pretty interesting. Unfortunately, there's no running water, there's no heat, there's no electricity, and there's no washrooms. They have porta potties out there. So if it's really hot, it's going to be really hot in that building. We have to kind of, judge that by, the weather and what's left. I know most of the weekends are gone because weekends seem to be the first thing that people book. So it's usually what's left is Fridays and Sundays, and then of course weekdays. I'm working on a lot of stuff. I've been really busy trying to plan that for my group, and really excited about some of these things that we got in the works and things that are already set in stone.
Oh, sounds like you've been busy.
Yeah, very busy.
Just hope Mother Nature cooperates for you.
Yeah.
Cooperating for shit lately.
Well, I'm hoping it's going to cooperate when we go up to the Beast of Bray Road and all that stuff. So
that too.
Same here. I am so tired of having weekends. I have weekends off, and I'm so tired of all week long it being nice, and then the weekend comes and it's crap, and we can't go do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to get down there. I mean, I'd take a weekend off if it wasn't raining, and go down to Resurrection Cemetery, because I wanted to go there last time, but it never happened.
Yeah.
And every time
I'm always here. I'm retired, so
every time we talk about it, we could go take this trip, and next thing you know, we're talking about it early in the week, the wife and I, and next thing you know, rain's in the forecast, and it's
Well, if you guys decide to come down here, I could show you guys around. I mean, there's a lot of places. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is very haunted. Resurrection. I could show you what's the grave of what some people believe might be Resurrection Mary. It was in the papers back in October of 1983, 50 years after the death of the girl that they believe to be Resurrection Mary. And there are a lot of other places that are very, very strange and unusual in Chicago.
I've got a list. I've got a bucket list just for Chicago.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
for the greater Chicago area, I should say.
Well, if you guys decide to come down, just send me that list, and I can definitely try to plan an itinerary out.
Like tomorrow, I'm gonna try to find the car.
The Blues Brothers Copmobile.
Yeah,
in Joliet, Illinois.
Yeah, before
on a stick.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go try to find that just to get a picture before I end up at the conference tomorrow.
Is that the Volo Museum you said?
No, it's the Blues Brothers car is on a pole in Joliet, Illinois, somewhere.
Oh, okay, okay.
The car from the original Blues Brother movie with a great big megaphone on the roof.
It's at 2401 South Chicago Street, Joliet, Illinois.
Okay. Well, part of one of our trips in August is going to be to go up to the Volo Museum because I understand they have the original Bonnie and Clyde car.
Oh, that would be cool too.
To see those hundreds of bullets that were pumped in by, Texas Rangers, and they died. They were riddled with bullets, and they have that Bonnie and Clyde car. And they also said they have the Black Beauty from the Green Hornet. They have I don't know if it's the original, but they do have a Batmobile up there and other things like that. So, I mean, you could spend some
Yeah,
time.
well, it depends on what Batmobile you're talking about. I mean, over the generations, that car has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite was always the original Adam West, Burt
Black
Ward
and
one.
red one.
Yeah. And then supposedly they got the Knight Rider,
Yeah.
what is it? The
Isn't it a
Fire
transfer?
Firebird, or is it a?
Oh, Kit was like a Pontiac Firebird or Trans Am or something.
Yeah, right.
Kit was a. I think he was a Firebird.
That's the talking
No.
that would talk to the guy.
No.
It's pretty cool.
Pontiac Firebird.
So they're supposed to have a lot of that stuff up there.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up
No,
now.
Kit was a Camaro. I think Kit was actually a Camaro.
I think it's like 30.
And he had a twin named Carr.
We actually tried to get into to do an investigation, okay, because the only team that was ever able to get in there was the Kling brothers from Ghost Lab, and they went in there, and of course
Pontiac Trans Am.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so he was a Trans Am.
So when they
Was
went,
it an 84 or an 86?
right,
82.
82.
Yes.
Right at the beginning of that style.
there
Yes.
you go.
I was just looking it up.
I thought it would be more like an 84 or an 86. And
No, there was definitely. I knew it was definitely a Pontiac
Right.
because it had that front end. I may not know much about cars, but I do know that.
When we tried to contact the museum to get in there, this was not that long after Ghost Lab was in there. And if you ever watch the Ghost Lab, they provoke the hell out of locations. I mean, they're worse than Ghost Adventures. And it must have left a bad taste in the owner's mouth because he never returned my calls, my emails, or anything. And I sent them numerous times. And so I guess they don't want, it's like Hands Off Paranormal. So I figured even though it's Hands Off Paranormal, I mean, geez, you got things in there, especially at the Bonnie and Clyde car. I mean, that was an untimely death. I mean, they were just riddled with bullets, and which I think was overkill, really. But I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, I watched a lot, but you during that time, those cops must have been pissed off. I mean, as many times as Bonnie and Clyde, not only did they have the better car,
They eluded him.
they outran them. So I mean, literally, they kind of like taunted them, the cops, because they knew that their car was better and faster.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that made Clyde pretty smart. He knew which cars to steal.
Yeah.
Which ones were going to outrun the cops.
Yeah, they had those V8s that were just coming out.
Right.
Yeah.
And the cops were getting frustrated.
Oh, they were literally being made a fool out of.
Right.
And they said, well, I mean, it's just like, the adrenaline got all the dander, whatever you want to call it. When they finally cornered them, they just said, they ain't escaping. We're gonna end it right here, and they did. Yeah.
Yeah, they made sure they weren't going to walk away.
I've always wanted to see that exact location where that took place in Texas, and I'm hoping maybe when I make a Texas trip one year, because I want to go out there to see the plane crash of Jim Croce, which is out there in Texas. Maybe I can, if it's not that far. Texas is a big state, I wanted to go out and see to investigate the Marfa lights, the spook lights out in Marfa, and maybe this location where the Bonnie and Clyde. Hopefully, it's marked with some sort of plaque or something, or at least you can find out using Google to find out where it actually was. I think that would be an interesting place to do an EVP session out there where those people were killed, but I mean, I don't know if everything that was actually in the movie Bonnie and Clyde actually happened, because they had Faye Dunaway, and then they had Gene Hackman was in there, and who was Clyde? I'm trying to think of his name. He was Shirley MacLaine's brother, believe it or not, and so they had a lot of interesting people in there. But I wonder if all that stuff was actually true, like when they kind of cornered that one Texas Ranger and they tied him up and they kind of made fun of him and all that.
Well,
so I don't know if it actually happened, but
I think a lot of Hollywood stuff is hyped so that they can get the ratings and the viewerships and stuff like this.
Sure.
I mean, what I've watched on them was more like the History Channel documentaries on Bonnie and Clyde, and they were taking a lot of that from where they captured the one woman that wasn't Bonnie, the other one. There was another woman in the car with them for a while, but they took it from her diary or something like that.
Yeah, supposedly that was Clyde's sister-in-law.
Right.
Because it was married to his brother. And then they had that young kid who was kind of hanging around Bonnie and Clyde, and he was the one that actually set him up, because the sheriff promised to let him off if they could pull this off, and they let him off, and they were able to ambush him. Yeah, that kind of stuff has always interested me because it's just going back to that scenario of untimely death, and what happens to those people that die violently like that, to see if they're hanging around or if there's some sort of residual, like here in Chicago, the St. Valentine's Day massacre.
I was just going to say something about that.
These people occasionally say they hear gunshots and machine gun fire, from that area, and they just attribute it to what happened back on February 14th, 1929. So, yeah.
Well, Dale, it's always been great to have you. We're running out of time.
Okay.
So tomorrow I'll be down in Chicago. So we'll be seeing you tomorrow sometime, Dale.
Cool. Yeah, I'll be there. I got a table set up there somewhere. I'm not exactly sure, but just within the 80 vendors, you'll just have to look for me.
Well, I'm just going down there to watch some of the people and talk, and see what's there.
Yeah.
So meet new people.
Yeah, meet new people. So
yeah, cool. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
Take a nice little road trip tomorrow, rain or shine. So
yeah,
I need to get out of the house.
Everything's inside there, so yeah.
What?
It's all inside down there, so yeah.
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, they did have last year. There was a couple of vendors outside in the parking lot,
but it wasn't raining.
No,
I think it's actually supposed to be.
Well, they do an annual one every year in Fowler, in Indiana, where they have all the vendors out in the street. They close it's a small town, so they close the street in downtown on both ends, and they get tables out there, and there's vendors out there with umbrellas and tents and so forth. And I was there a couple times. It was really nice. As long as you got nice weather.
Next weekend is 13th, right?
Yeah.
No, the 13th is Thursday.
The 15th and the 16th.
Never mind. It's Thursday. Anyway. All right. So stay safe, everybody. Have a nice weekend. And remember, anything's possible. We'll be back next week.